to promote myself.
Okay, I'll share the screen then, shall I? One moment. For the purposes of the tape, welcome to this conversation about Actionable Agile and probabilistic forecasting following a request on the Breakfast Bridge channel. So there, can everyone see those slides?
Yeah, you got 76 messages in your inbox.
Oh, sorry. It's when you're when you do consulting work, you end up with like a new Gmail address for every client you have. Right. So, welcome. I'm joined by Greg. I'm Ben.
Hello. Hi.
This is what we're talking about today. Lucy speaking today. I don't know who Lucy speaking is, but we'll meet her maybe. Lucy speaking, this is kind of what we're going into today. Bit of a scene setting around estimation and forecasting just to help ease the conversation later. Then we're going to go into kind of what Kanban is, sorry, what Actionable Agile is in a nutshell, how it works, and then we're going to dive into useful uses of that tool. And then I'll go into the caveats, limitations, and assumptions when you use that kind of tool. Okay. Is that in line with what most people are expecting us to talk about today? Fantastic. Great. So
yeah, no, I would say it's quite casual. So I would say interrupt us at any point.
Yeah.
You have any clarification needed or question.
Fab. So really loosely speaking, when we're talking about an estimation in this conversation, an estimate is essentially a bit of guesswork. We tell ourselves that we're basing it on knowledge or recent work or similar features. However, what the important concept is to get here is that it's impossible to know for sure how long something might take that we've never done before. And also the idea that estimates on their own aren't very useful unless we give some idea of probability. And we'll talk about why that's of note in a moment. So probabilistic forecasting is the approach to giving forecasts with a probability attached to them that denotes its likelihood. And Actionable Agile is one such tool that helps you do that. It helps you use data around how your team has been working so far. And based on a few assumptions, it helps you look into the future of what is likely to be possible when you're asked about upcoming delivery dates or amount of work you might be able to get done in a particular time frame. Okay. Over to Greg.
Hello. So going into some of the tools. So yeah, I would clarify. I think Actionable Agile, just if you don't know, is software. It's a suite of tools which provides lots of different kind of metric, measurement data. Some of the forecasting stuff, the probabilistic stuff, is something called Monte Carlo simulation, which features, quite strongly in this tool set, and I think is really the engine and the power behind this tool that everyone loves so much. There's other stuff in there though, so you can plug it into Jira. I think there's a standalone version. Is that right, Ben? And then I think it integrates. There's some integrations with other platforms as well. Do you know?
There's
Yeah.
a DevOps one. That's what I'm looking at purchase at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a DevOps at its base. Kind of original vanilla Actionable Agile is a standalone tool, and you upload a CSV file that you've taken out of whatever tool you're using. And in recent years, there's been more integrations, so it can be part of Jira and part of other things. And they are amazing because, being old as I am, I used to have to take out CSV files and muck around with the data and then upload it and then work out why it wasn't working. So if you're using Jira or Azure DevOps, it's really well integrated now, and it's almost seamless in Jira in particular.
Okay, so I'm going to assume everyone here, is familiar with some of this stuff that gives you information, right? So a Scrum or a Kanban board, you're probably all familiar with those, what they look like. They do give you information, right? What's going on right now, right? Where are we in the sprint? That sort of thing. There's a sprint health gadget. I don't know how useful that is. I don't really ever use it or look at it. Burn down. Everyone's kind of heard of those. There's other kind of stuff that helps us as a team outside of these things. But to me, this is kind of operational. Like this, what you're looking at here, these are operational things. What's actually going on right now? And then the aging work in progress might be the new thing for you because it's included in Actionable Agile. And what you're seeing here is this sort of heat map of how we're doing with the stuff that's in progress at the moment. So you can see 4 blue dots in that screen there. One is kind of in between green and yellow, next one's green, and then there's another one in yellow, and then there's one that's in the red or in the dark orange, right? You see that? So what that's telling you is if it's in the green, yellow, it's probably kind of in that safe zone of like, okay, this is perking along nicely. This is along the lines of what we would expect in our delivery rate. But there's one item that's in the red or in the, you know, in the danger zone, which means it's been in progress too long and it's slowing down our flow. So that's probably the thing that we should swarm around or you know, do what it takes to move that across into you know, towards done. And do you want to add anything there, Ben, as far as
No, we'll in a moment. I'll explain in a little bit more detail how it comes to this information, and then maybe there's some things that become clearer.
To give you an idea of where I've used this, I have used it in the daily stand-up, maybe not every day, but on occasion. Bring it up during the sprint, maybe a couple of times as part of the daily stand-up to say how are we actually doing with the stuff that we're working on at the moment, because you know, you might see things that are, if you've got a bunch of stuff in that danger zone, then you know, that means we're getting stuck and we're probably not going to hit our commitments. Okay, moving on.
Sorry, Greg, just a question for Ben. Ben, will you be covering in the part you mentioned the where you define the green, yellow, and red zones, or how you do that?
I think Ben will. Yeah.
Well, let's. Yes.
It's all based.
I think in sense, and this is, you'll see how we put this together yesterday. I think we'll come back to this once we've looked at the cycle time charts, and then we'll come back and see what it means.
Great, sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben.
If I don't cover that, nudge me.
I will.
No problem.
Back to it. Short answer is it's kind of predefined based on our performance to date.
Gotcha.
Next slide. This is a cumulative flow diagram. Who is familiar with these? Has anyone ever seen these? Okay. Basically what it helps you with is, this is more about how is the team doing historically and, you know, like over time, and you can see the dates along the bottom. You've got number of work items going vertically. I've also seen it based on story points counts and stuff, but yeah, I don't like that approach, right? It's number of items, and then you've got the statistics in the grid there as an option to view that. But basically what you're seeing is here, you know, how can you identify bottlenecks? Where do things get stuck? What is our rate of delivery? It helps you determine system whip. You know, kind of visually you can see the cycle time. It really helps with a lot of information. But basically you can see, you know, where do things get stuck and bottlenecked. So this can be really useful in interpreting you know, things that get stuck in your workflow. Just to give you a sense, you see backlog queue, in progress, review, done. You can see no review step started happening until, you know, 6th of June in this case. So you had a bunch of stuff in progress, which is the orange, and then you started to have in progress and in review, and then we have started to make use of our queue in early June. So it's giving you this visual. And one cool thing about Actionable Agile over Jira is that you can make a box around the bit you want to see, and you can exclude a bunch of done stuff so that you don't have this massive dark blue zone in the bottom. So that I like Actionable Agile more than Jira for that reason. But any questions about CFD? We're not really going to focus on. We're going to focus in on Monte Carlo simulation, so I don't want to dwell on some of these other tools as much.
Okay, to move on.
Yep.
Fab.
So this I made this new slide yesterday. Basically, this is your cycle time. I tend to, cycle time is a generic term for the time, the kind of average time it takes to get from one state to another state. There's a few standard ones. So like development cycle time is from the time you move it to in progress to the time you move it to done. There are other ones, right? The customer lead time is another one, which is a different kind of cycle time. That's from the time it was requested to the time that it's done. So that's more upstream, and it's including more, right? So that this can be useful to understand how you're doing. So how it helps answer the question, how long will it take you to deliver a story? So that, you know, the client, the customer is coming to you and they want to know, okay, I've got this story, it's ready to go. I've checked with the product owner, it's ready. If you can get going on it, you know, in the next sprint or tomorrow, whatever, how long will it take you to get it done? This answers that question. This helps you answer the question with confidence. And then the team can look at this chart to say, how are we doing? And notice here, we've got color coding, right? So you've got bugs, spikes, stories, support items, tasks. You can have different rates of delivery for different types of work. And I think, Ben, you've got a really good example later on, right, of this?
Yeah, I'll go into detail that, but should we explain what these percentile lines are?
Yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to mention before that is the bits that are way up high. That is really bad cycle time. And the tool allows you to interactively choose that item and talk to the team about that item and say, how did this outlier happen? Is it a cause for concern, right? So you can inspect your ability to deliver and as a team talk about why you had these problems for certain things. Okay, so go ahead and talk about percentage.
Yeah, so essentially what this is, we've got data of everything that came through a team in between two dates. So I think we're starting there. It looks like that's January 2022, all the way up to fairly into the end of March there. So each dot in there represents an item of work that came through the team. Greg's mentioned they're color coded in different ways. And if we know when it came into the system and we know when it came out of the system, that's how we derive the cycle time. What those dotted lines are they're separating different subsets of that work into what we would call percentiles. So to give you an example, where we have where it says 85 on the right hand side here, if you can see my cursor, that dotted line, everything underneath that dotted line represents 85% of the work that came through the team in that period of time. So that dotted line tells me that 85% of items that came through the team in that period got done within 7 days or less. Okay. So that means if we're giving some kind of expectation when a new thing comes into the team, and there's some caveats here, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we should be able to say that there's every chance that something that comes in new to the team, it's very likely to get done within 7 days or less. Okay. Any questions about that concept before we go deeper into that?
So does this chart show cycle time from kind of like in progress to done? This isn't a cycle time like of a two
this
specific
particular
states.
one.
You can customize that.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I was just wondering in this specific scenario.
And it's only showing done items, right? So it's not showing stuff that's still in progress. It's not going to figure in here yet.
Yeah.
Cool, but you could configure this to say if you just wanted to look at like from in development to test, for example, you could.
Yeah, and I've what's really good about Actionable Agile is that you can toggle in and out, like how far through your process or funnel that you take it through. At a client recently, our Kanban looked through the whole refining to delivery and done process, and we're able to hone in on where there are little blockages and issues, and how long is this kind of stuff taking, and how long is this kind of stuff taking. And it wasn't just about pointing out things, going, why is that taking long? Why is that taking long? The whole process of inspecting that stuff helps incentivize us to create smaller pieces of work that we can pull through. And I'll go into a little bit of that in a bit more time. The other thing to note, going back to the work in progress chart here, this view is overlaying those percentiles over the board. So in this example, I don't know if this is probably a little bit, I could probably zoom in a bit better there, couldn't I?
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's quite small.
It's all right. Can I actually? Oh, it won't let me zoom in when I'm in that mode. Well, what this is saying, so that 85th percentile is 23 days. So this is saying to me that in this instance, in this team, usually a piece of work comes through within 23 days or more. So if we've got something in test here, and it's edging closer towards that 23 days, that's going closer into the red, because the system knows that if it's taking this long to get as far through the process as in test, there's probably not a lot of time for it to then get through the rest of the process. So that's how that traffic lighting system works. Is that helpful for you, Mohammed?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So any questions about that before we move on, and we'll show a practical use of it?
Sorry, if I may, my question is, so we're saying, I just want to understand it. We're saying that 85% of the work items get done within 7 days. This is referring to the other image. Yeah, that one there.
We're saying that 85% of the work that came through the team in this period got done within 7 days. And
Okay.
if the development patterns and the types of work that come in and the other information around how work comes into our system is similar to the data set that we've got, we would expect that trend of 7 days or less to continue.
Yeah, and I will just give you some context. This is real data from a real project that I've worked on. And you notice that the density decreases and the cycle time goes up around like late October, right? Early November. Do you see that? Like right in the middle, basically. So if you want a better picture of your cycle time, you would probably grab from that date onward to get because something changed. We moved out of hardcore project mode. We removed a team member, and we went in more of a support mode for that product. So you wouldn't want to grab that earlier data, right? Does that make sense?
Also, while you raise that, Omar, it's worth noting as well, Actionable Agile, or any model really, doesn't know that maybe your team's being restructured next month. It doesn't know that your team of 5 engineers is going down to 3 or 2 next week.
Yeah, I was going to say it doesn't account for uncertainty.
I mean, that's why I'm presenting this right now from my office that used to be a cupboard and not my yacht, right? It's not going to do your lottery numbers, but based on that model of data, if that data is a useful model of how we think behaviors of development are going to be in the coming period, then it's a useful tool.
Are you really in a cupboard?
Well, it's a lovely office. It's a recording space, but it's a bit long and thin, so it's not the best. I don't get a lot of daylight, so I've got my vitamin D here.
Nice.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on? I was going to say, I was going to interrupt Greg earlier when he said average. I didn't, but I'm going to just come back to that now, because we have outliers and things, we have a problem with mean average. So this green line that's coming through here represents the rolling mean at any one time. So if we've said that most items get done in 7 days or less, if we were to use the mean, look at what the mean is on this day where I'm holding up here. So on the 27th of March, see that mean is about 13 days.
14, yeah.
So if we're going to use that mean in that situation, then we could become unstuck, because we could end up with a famine situation where we would overcompensate for the time needed to deliver something. We might not have the work we need getting ready in our refinement funnel. Likewise, if we go back to, let's say, this period here, where it's 20th of June, where our mean is about 4 days, that would be an over-optimistic situation. If we're forecasting based on that, we would come unstuck, because we'd be letting people down, because we'd be assuming at that point most work comes in and gets done within 4 days or less. So that difference between mean and that percentile based approach is the real crux of what Actionable Agile and this kind of probabilistic forecasting is about. Is that fair to say, Greg?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we got some much sexier stuff to come. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, so I've already covered it actually, but this is the thing around average or mean average. So that variance between good sprints and not so good sprints, it's really, really hard to deal with if you're not looking at a percentile based approach. We don't want to overpromise. We don't want to underpromise if we really believe in creating a sustainable system.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not much. It's not just what do you think, how do you think we're going to deliver? It's what's your confidence level of how you think we're going to deliver, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Should we go over to the next screen then?
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yeah, so here we get into Monte Carlo simulation now. This is a lot to look at, and if you've never seen it, it might be a bit difficult to digest. But essentially, there's kind of two different modes. All right, one is the by when type, and the other one is the how many. So the by when is when you have a scope constraint, right? We need to deliver the whole scope, we need to deliver everything in this backlog or this many items, right? So you say we have 100 items in our backlog. How long can we kind of confidently, reliably think that we'll deliver those 100 items by when, right? So you load the simulator. You say, okay, we definitely have to deliver these 100 items in the backlog. Run the simulation, and then you get the engine building it, and then it tells you confidently you can deliver this by April, in that green sort of 85% confidence level that you can deliver everything by the beginning of April, right? This is an old chart, so it's not it's not showing real dates now. But
So Greg, it's looking at the number of issues rather than anything more than that. Is that
yeah,
right?
that's correct. Yeah, item count, and it doesn't care about whether they're size 8s or like story point type stuff.
Yeah,
It's bigger.
doesn't know.
It's bigger picture stuff.
Well, what I should probably add as well, that when it does a Monte Carlo situation, what it's doing is it's assuming that between now and this is by when, isn't it? So we've got X number of items that we want to predict the delivery of. For each item, it's going to assign in the simulation, it's going to give each item a cycle time based on the distribution of possible cycle times in the model that was used to create the simulation.
Okay.
So if you've got, for example, a model where the 85th percentile is saying things are done in 7 days or less, there'll be a bias of most things getting done within 7 days or less that will feature in that probabilistic forecast of when something will be done.
Gotcha.
Do you follow? Great.
Absolutely.
We'll show the tool, and I'll make sure, remind me to show you how it changes when you change the input data set.
Yeah. Fab.
Next
Should we go
one.
see the view? Okay.
Next one is how many. So this is we have a deadline. Okay, so time frame constraint, right? We need to finish this by project or whatever by before Christmas or whatever. So how much can we deliver? How much of the backlog can we deliver by this date with confidence? And again, we tend to use that 85% confidence level, and we pick a date. So we say from now until December 21st or something. What do we think we can do by that date? So it depends on what's your constraint, right? What's the thing that you can't move, you can't budge. And there's another consideration on the next one, which is a combination of things. So this is like your cost constraint or budget constraint. This is a combination of things, right? But it's quite simple. We have this much money. We don't care about deadlines. We're flexible on scope, but how many can we deliver by the time the budget runs out? So you have to have a budget burn for your team somehow. Like, what is our team cost, or whatever the costs are that are going to burn the budget over time. That's what that thing is on the right. It's like a very basic budget burn down chart. Every month we burn this much money. Over time it will go down to 0. So let's pick that date for the how many Monte Carlo, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, you would think a Scrum team made of 7 people earning a certain amount of money. We're talking, what are we talking about? Quick number crunch. I don't know, like 40 grand a month or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I've got an example, if it's helpful. So where this came into play with a client was where we had a well-defined backlog of, I'll round it up, 100 items, and we knew that the money was going to run out by the time that we'd only completed 80 of those. So having this data allowed a really open conversation to say, we know we're not going to get all of the work that you wanted done. So how do we prioritize the backlog to make sure that we're getting really the high value stuff done? Because not all of it is actually going to be there in time.
Yeah, you get ahead of that with a difficult conversation early. And yeah, you gotta have a good relationship with that client, right? You need to have a trusting relationship.
I mean, I've also used the information from here to create burn-ups for like longer tail pieces of work. So when I was working in a energy Internet of Things company, we had a kind of deadline for a collaboration we were doing with an energy company. There were various slices and things we were doing. I used data out of here combined with my user story mapping to put together the slices, and I was constantly using information as those slices evolve and change, putting the things into here to create that trend on a burn up, to be able to give an idea of what might be possible, and doing that in a credible way. It then meant that as an agile coach, it kind of solidified for me one of the key things that I'm looking for is to ruthlessly find any source of variability and eliminate them. So it was really helpful to be able to use this information and have a credible visual model for where we're going and what we're aiming towards.
Nice. Okay, what's next?
I think we're going to go show a demo, aren't we? Should we switch
Yeah,
over?
make sure I am ready to go here.
Let me make you co-host.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop sharing.
Excuse me. It's still not letting me share.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Ta-da! That should be better now. How's that?
Yeah, nice to see my friend Doug's here. All right. Is this it? This is it. Okay. This is the tool. I got all of this overlay. How do you get rid of the zoom overlay? Hide.
That's all right. We can't see it, Greg.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can't see any overlay.
I know, but I can't use the tool. All right, so let's go with the aging work in progress and see what we got. Ooh, that doesn't look good. This is a terrible situation. So you can see here, down here, I'm using the selector. So if I select all the data from history, we used to have a very good delivery rate, and now it's terrible, right? And that's why it's all in the sort of red zone, the danger zone. But like I said, the project changed in November, so it's still pretty bad. But yeah, you can see these things. The percentages grew inside because our delivery rate's much slower. Right, as I go further over, I think it might improve even more. Yeah, there we go. So, but then it's a smaller data set. But you can see, I'm not quite sure if I need to filter out. So sometimes you need to filter out certain things like epics and subtasks. So I'm just going to double check. And I think you've got it. Yeah, see, it's not filtered out. So what I would do is filter out certain things. There we go. Now,
yeah, unless on the epics point, actually,
unless
you have a system where you are right sizing epics, and you're making all epics being a certain size, there's very little use that you can get out of putting epics through this system. Stories, tasks, regular things that come through day to day with your team are usually of a similar or similar order of magnitude, or there's some controls around them to do with how they are formed and how you agree to pull them in. So be very cautious of trying to use these tools to predict epics unless you have a very involved system of dealing with that. Dan Vicanti, who created Actionable Agile, he is an advocate of a thing called right sizing, but I'm not a fan of it. But it is an extra process around artificially creating those controls. So don't take for granted that it will predict epics if you're not doing something outside of the tool to control that.
Okay. Yeah, so I just filtered out epics and subtasks so that I'm looking at the work items themselves. And it's worth mentioning, and Ben reminded me of this, you can set up filters in Jira to exclude those automatically, and then have your own kind of actionable agile metrics focused query, basically, or kind of, so you can do it that way, and then you don't have to worry about that filtering that I just did. So I mean, you're seeing the tool in real life, right? So I basically I filtered those out, right? Long story short. So that this is actually looking kind of okay, right? There's a few things that are in progress, some stuff waiting for product owner review, stuff ready for test. Oh, good, yeah. And this is the thing that you would use maybe. Some people could use it every day at the stand up, or other people maybe a couple times a week or something like that. Let's go into, should we jump straight to Monte Carlo, like the high value stuff? I'm going to say yes. So here you've got the controls here, and you have daily throughput. So I like to use like, let me see if I can find it. Line chart, bar chart. This is all good. It doesn't, yeah, it's the workflow stages. I'm just checking. Okay, so this is the how many Monte Carlo? How many can we do by a certain date? So let's choose just for fun, let's choose like Christmas. Let's say Halloween. We have a deadline, Halloween. Now I've chosen that date, and I want to do many more simulations. So there's a more button here. So I tend to do the maximum. It's just carrying out this algorithm with many simulations. The default is 10,000. You just push that button and let it go to 1,000,000. This just gives you a little bit more certainty and clarity. Now it's using the whole data set from basically all of history. So what it's telling me here is we can confidently deliver 46 by Halloween. Okay. However, this is where it gets interesting. If I choose a data set from, let's say, late October of last year and go all the way to today, you get a much different picture because our delivery rate slowed right down. So instead of 42 or whatever it was, it's 22. That's half. Because our team, we lost, we reduced the team size. We kind of went out of heavy project delivery mode and into a kind of a maintenance mode in this situation. So things changed. So if you know that date where things change, you want to take from that data set. So it's quite powerful. Does that make sense? So I don't have video. I'm not seeing video. So
quick
Hmm.
question.
Go
Go
on.
ahead.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, so in terms of using this for forecasting, have you been in environments where the team isn't necessarily trusting of the data set? Because is it just let's say as an agile coach, you go, I completely trust in terms of the data that's in the system and what the power of Monte Carlo and probabilistic forecasting. And if you kind of look at the data and you say, okay, for this period, we've had this changes. So I'm now going to suggest that we can do this number of work items, epics, whatever, to be delivered. Have you been in scenarios where the delivery team or the developers, whoever, they don't trust?
Or they ignore it, or they think, no, we can deliver more than that. Yeah. It goes both ways, right? But yeah, I think there's a whole section around tips and caveats, which you just need to use it as a tool, and you need to be upfront about it and honest. So you say there are, if it's looking really bleak, then maybe there are some steps we can take to improve the situation, or if it seems completely unbelievable, then maybe there's something somebody knows that's not, that the data will change somehow, and we know that data will change, right? Like we'll be adding 2 team members next week, so we think it'll be much more, that kind of thing. Anything to add there, Ben?
No, I mean, the world is full of agile coaches that have lorded a tool over a team and seen it as the absolute truth, right? So whether or not a team accepts that is to do with your skills as an agile coach, I think, because this tool is useful if you can have some confidence that the data set used for the model is indicative of how you think your delivery and development practices are going to be over that period. Yes, there's people that are sometimes untrustworthy of a tool. That's not necessarily the tool's fault. That's more about how we use it in that context. So that's a very long way of saying it depends, Christina. Sorry, Noel, did you want to?
Yeah, just to add something. So I've been tripped up by this as well, where in the beginning of a project, I've been overly optimistic by saying, okay, well, we haven't got enough data yet, but I'm sure it will work out differently. Even though the predictability of 1 million trials was telling us we were going to land in, mid-April, I was saying, oh no, it's fine. I'm sure it will come in. It'll be kind of end of March. So I think actually it is a really good tool. It is really accurate, and that we shouldn't kind of lay out our own assumptions and hopes on top of it, because that's when we get into trouble.
I've got an example I'll talk through later, which shows a particular caveat to be wary of. Sorry, Noel, go on.
I was just going to say, Greg, if you just scroll down a little bit, because we're missing the bottom of the screen on the left where the calendar is. So we can't see where it ends at the moment, because there's like a thing across the bottom of the screen. But I think that's the missing piece from the narrative that you're giving, is that actually it will show you the end date quite clearly with those green squares that we can't quite see it on the screen at the moment, but no biggie.
I think maybe if I do this, oh no, it's just
this is a tiny laptop.
Yeah, you can share it afterwards. That's fine.
Yeah, it's because it's well, maybe because I'm just sharing the browser tab, but also it's what I'm seeing, right? So it's 31st of October is the date I chose, but it'll change when we switch it to the other at Monte Carlo. So let's jump over on that one.
Quick question: can you set your arrival rate or discovery rate, or does it just take that from Jira of new items joining the backlog?
Well, the rate, so that rate, this data is based on the rate that happened.
So
it's happening.
So if you're adding new items to your backlog, it's factoring that in.
Yes,
one item.
It's going to assume that arrival rate is fairly uniform to how it's been in that data set.
Okay.
But that's a really, really good question, because sometimes people do a load of discovery and then they use this tool and they think it's all going to be great, but then they neglect to do discovery on a consistent basis, sustainable basis, and then they fall foul. They have that feast and famine. So
they add 10 items per week to the backlog, then you need to factor that in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Or you could say, okay, how many new work items do we add so that we know our backlog will be bigger? So so we're gonna have to think about dropping stories from our plan.
So when you look at burn, sorry, Mal, I'll go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I completely agree. Otherwise, you're trying to hit a moving target, aren't you? Because unless the backlog remains static, then you're always, no matter how much work you do, there's always more that gets added in.
So what I've done with teams where I'm doing longer term delivery in particular, if I know that I've got a pretty solid discovery, refinement, planning, delivery process, so i.e. we have a sustainable pace of all the relevant activities. Over time with a team, I've tended to get to have an idea of typically how big do slices tend to grow, and within that I allow an allowance which I then use in my forecasting. So that affects which numbers I then put into this tool and then present when I'm doing my burn ups. I'll have a burn up based on an expected growth of X amount in this particular amount of work. In that way. Sharon, I just saw you put your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, I had a question around the trials. So you've gone, so right now we have 10K, but initially you've moved that to 1 million. Are these like tests, predictions? Because this is like machine learning. So you train it with the data that you put in there, so from the data set, and then you can get it to start to predict. But the 1 million trials, is it guessing? I mean, does it have 1 million trials in there, or does it have less than that, but projecting 1 million trials based on the historical data? Is that clear?
Ben, you want to take that?
Now, I am not Carol Vorderman, but as I understand it, it's a relevant question. As I understand it, it's doing the calculation that number of times. So this is how many? So it's saying based on the percentile data that we've got, between these dates, how many might we be able to get done? It's doing that several times. It's doing that so many times and using that information to build the chart, as I understand it.
Yeah, and I think it would give you kind of more, maybe more granularity, more confidence, because the number 49 might change. In this case, it didn't change, but if maybe if you have a lot of variability in your cycle time, I think it might change slightly, but to like 47 or something.
Okay.
I don't know the science behind it, actually. Yeah, I probably should.
No,
But
that's fine. I think it just springs to mind at the moment. I mean, a few weeks ago, I wouldn't be able to ask you this question, but I'm doing a sort of Python. I'm learning Python at the moment, so a lot of it is jumping out right now. So yeah.
we're getting short on time. I want to jump to the other one, and there's a few more things to cover as well, right, Ben?
Yep.
So this is that calendar view that's maybe more helpful, and then I'm going to say, okay, 100 items in our backlog currently. When can we expect to complete the 100 items in our backlog, or just 100 items from now? You can see the 85% mark is giving us a date of, can I even see that? Is it showing?
I think it's 21st.
April.
Yeah,
It's April the 21st.
There we go.
On your chart below.
22nd, apparently. Oh, I see. Yeah, 21st, 22nd. Yeah, 20. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So visually in the calendar, you can see it, right? April 21st or so. If I choose, sorry, the resolution's a bit messed up. If I choose a different percentage, I can't. Sorry, there's a resolution issue here. I think it's a bug, but if I had a bigger resolution, I would choose a different percentage and it would focus on that. But you can see here, the 70, yeah, like 75% is earlier in April. So lower confidence in delivering sooner. Does that make sense? We're going to go with 50. We're looking at 50-50 chance to get it done by the 1st of March. So lower confidence, 1st of March. So you can use that data to say, okay, we know we're getting a new team member next week. We know the team is committed to making smaller user stories or something like that. We've just run a user story workshop with them. So all of those things combined maybe can give us some optimism. So you can say as an Agile coach or a Scrum Master, our confidence is higher. So we're going to give you this more optimistic number. It's risky, but it's the kind of thing you can do.
But I guess the other thing you can do there is you can go back and redo this in like 2 sprints time based on that new data, right? So
yeah, and I know for a fact that Noel has done this. So he talked about his example earlier. He's done this sort of thing. And the other thing to be that's very important is the data set, right? So this team delivered really well all through this period over here, but you need to grab more recent data to get a better picture. So again, 100 items, it's not April anymore, is it? It's March 2025. So we're talking nearly a year later. So their delivery rate slowed right down.
I think you need to submit a feature request to just make that 1 million by default, so you don't have to press the button 17 times.
Yeah. I think maybe quick and dirty, you don't need to run that. So it gives you that option. I'm sure there's a good reason for this tool here, for this option. But I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I like the data set selector function here, this feature. This is showing you throughput. This is showing you the throughput in a different way. This is basically the date selector view of the thing above it. And then here's your results. And then the calendar view, I think, is a fairly new feature, showing you a visual calendar to make it clearer, because this visually wasn't very helpful. Does that make sense? Was there another? So do we skip cycle time? Oh, cumulative flow. Yeah. So yeah, the one little thing about this is that it's really hard to read at the moment, right? See what you can do really quick. Oops. Sorry, give me a moment. Maybe there's there's more to, so it's workflow stages. Remove the backlog to weed out the, the sort of confusion. And then you can take this and you can grab the bottom. This is what Actionable Agile lets you do, is get rid of that stuff so you can see a little bit better what's going on here. Sorry, we have a hand raised.
Oh, hi, sorry.
Come on.
Yes, hi. So my question was, and apologies if I've missed this already. I can see that it's Atlassian. So is it right to assume that it's either an app or a plugin that you can have as an add-on to your Jira?
That's right. Yeah, Jira plugin. It costs money, and then there's a Azure DevOps plugin, I believe, and then there's a standalone software. The problem with the standalone, I believe, is that you need to get someone to get that data out of Jira or whatever and format it a bit for the purposes of the standalone app.
Well, you can hook in directly, but you need those keys that I don't know a lot about. But for Jira in particular, you need the keys to be able to go pull it into the tool.
Right.
But yeah, it's there's a few different ways you can access it for sure. By the way, I don't have an active license of this at the moment. I'm doing a lot of training at the moment, which is why Greg's doing it on his screen. I'm here with like 28 inches of screen. I could have been doing this if I had the tool. So
sorry about that. Yeah,
I'm not torturing Greg. It's just he has the thing.
But yeah, you can see here, it gives you like real data here. So like 36 days cycle time, 6 items WIP at this particular stage. So it's giving you, interactive help. And then one other thing I want to show you real quick is the cycle time scatter plot, which is that thing we saw in the example. And then you can say, okay, what were the outliers? All right, there was an outlier. This one here, 17 weeks cycle time. Why? You click on it, you look at the ticket as a team, you say, why did this item take so long? What was the other items here? It's all interactive. It takes you through to the individual items. In this case, you get 2 items there, etc. And then, everything's interactive. And what else you can do? You do that selector again to give you that more accurate read on your so the percentages will change position if I move this way. So see how it moves around, 50 and 85, 95, they'll move up and down and stuff as I grab more data. That's a very whistle-stop tour, but we need to I'll probably need to stop presenting and we need to move on to get to the end of the session, right? So let me stop sharing.
Great, let me take next to it. So now I'm just going to go through the caveats and things to think about when you're using it. This is really, really important because this is a great tool. It's been going around for quite a long time, but it's really, in my view, as an agile coach, you have responsibility to use data and models that you understand and that you're aware of those limitations. And if you can do that, you're then able to manipulate the information to be useful at that situation, or make sure you've got the right credible sources. So it's really, really important that we talk about this. So key carrots, I've mentioned this before. Remember, the data model is only as good as the data that goes in. So it doesn't know that you're going to have a restructure next week. It doesn't know Barry and Tina are going to run off to the team. It doesn't know that it doesn't know that maybe that there's an announcement that the company is being sold and morale's going to go low, so people's rate of work is going to go down. It does not know those things. So if anything like that happens, and if any of those sources of variability are likely to affect how things deliver, you might use this as a line in the sand. But any forecasting information where things are not totally uniform, just use this as data and look at other things and take those into account in a discussion with your team and stakeholders. Okay. One
other thing, crucially, if you show these things to your teams, it maybe helps them to say, okay, yeah, I need to make sure I keep Jira up to date. So if they're not keeping Jira statuses up to date, then that's a real problem for this tool.
Do you remember those Credit Expert Experian adverts? I talk to my team as it being their data selves in some ways. Meet your data selves. What do we think? Next bit is, so like I said, it assumes little change. So look out for those sources of variability and destroy them, eliminate them where you can. So the variance of the type and the type of work coming in affects the strength of the forecast. And this speaks to, I think it was something that I think Omar mentioned. I'm going to give you an example in a moment. So monitor the different types of work, the different classes of service, the things that are distracting from different types of work, where you're begging and borrowing, which I'll show in a moment. And as I mentioned, it doesn't know about Christmas and all those kinds of changes. So use this as part of the conversation, not the definitive, it's got your number, it can predict the future. As I say, I am not here on my yacht, sadly. Okay.
Yeah. One example of that is I was using a tool in like March or something, or April, and I was intentionally selecting data from January the 4th because nothing happened over Christmas and New Year. And so I was going to get a very bad, result if I choose that period of time. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So this is an example of a team I was working with. The things in orange, so the things in green are the strategic work. So that was the kind of features, improvements that they were making to the system that they were in charge of. The things in orange are what we called at the time unplanned. But when we say unplanned, what we really mean is unplanned expedited work. So that's work that comes in quite frequently, but when it comes in, it will distract them from the strategic work because it's deemed as high priority. And that stuff might get done within a day or 4 days or whatever from this information. Now, if I looked at this cycle time graph and I was predicting based on the 85th percentile of cycle time, which here is 4 days, I would actually be producing quite unreliable forecasts. Does anyone know why? So if we've got strategic work and I'm predicting when a bunch of strategic work is going to happen, and I'm saying I'm using a prediction based on 85th percentile of 4, why might that be flawed? Any thoughts? Feel free to speak out.
Because most of your work's unplanned.
Yeah.
And you expect the unplanned work to be coming through at the same rate, and you're trying to forecast planned work.
It's not necessarily about the rate. I mean, that's a factor, but a key factor is that all that unplanned work, the majority of my work is unplanned and it's getting done quicker. So when you use the 85th as the most things get done in this time, it's actually dragging that rate down. So that was really important for us. At one point, this team we found was about 67% of their work was unplanned work. So, and we actually found over a period of time that unplanned work amount was growing and growing and growing. So for me to use a 85th percentile based on a growing rate, like a situation that's still evolving, was really, really unreliable. So we use this information actually to get priority created for doing something about that unplanned work. A lot of it was repetitive work that could be done through automation. We could be making self-serve information. So what that meant when we were forecasting that strategic work, we actually removed that unplanned work from the model. Okay, but we still paid attention to how frequently that unplanned work is happening, and we did things to try and control it. And if that rate was going up, that was going to threaten the dates that we've presented to the business and to our stakeholders. Yeah.
Worth mentioning, Ben, I know we're out of time, but if you want to get some forecasting on your planned work, the Actionable Agile tool would allow you to filter on that field, that planned field. You could untick the no value, or sorry, the purple and the orange, and then it would only take the input data of the green items, and then that could give you a better prediction.
Yeah. So things are toggleable.
Quick question on that, if I may. So does that mean if you've got a team that does the support work of a live product as well as new features, say, you can say, for example, 30% of their time is on support work? Can you plug that into that and say, based on that?
You'd have to do that kind of prediction yourself by taking out that support work from the forecast. And then the communication would be, we think with an 85% confidence we can get something done by this date. And one of your caveats would be, provided the support quota doesn't significantly change from the rate that it's been at over the period of the data set, which you said was 30%. Yeah, which in any kind of project, agile or not, any project management approach, you need to be keeping a tab on what things are taking your teams away from the other story, the other thing they should be working on.
Yes, you have a voiceover and you have caveats for interpreting the data you're looking at.
So just the last thing I want to just mention, then I'll answer this question in the chat. So the best levers you can pull and it's your responsibility to be aware of and to be able to pull. It's reducing your work in progress. So this data in here will help you be able to monitor how work in progress amount affects your cycle time. So that's a really helpful tool to pull, lever to pull if you're worried about dates and things. Look at how that's working out. Paying attention to discovery and a refinement funnel. So as we mentioned before, I think Rob, you asked that thing about the arrival rate. Removing the impediments and sources of cycle time variability. So monitoring that support work, but also anything else that's affecting things there. Breaking work into smaller parts and monitoring how the different types of work and classes of service interact and interplay with each other. Okay. That's kind of all I've got there. I've got a question in the chat, although Shaywan isn't here anymore, I don't think. Oh no, who was it? It was Shaywan. As you use the tool as a line in the sand, is there any way to capture those scenarios that can affect performance? Yeah, we just keep a diary. If Shaywan's watching this, that's something through experience. So typical things, announcements in the company, staffing. I often get asked about holiday and sickness. Usually, any week or any few weeks in a month, there's usually someone off ill. If there's an event that means a lot of people are off ill, suddenly like COVID breaks out or something, that would be a thing to think about. If you didn't take into account for Christmas, you're always going to add something onto it for Christmas because, you know, in a lot of companies things slow down. But just, you know, out of practice, just be cognizant of the kind of things that you see. We are over time, but I'm happy to stick around for a question if anyone's got any.
Yeah, I actually did. On your point earlier, you were talking about right sizing.
Yes.
So I've made a bit of an assumption that, and I may have got it from somewhere else, I'm not saying this was mine, but I've made an assumption as long as we're inconsistently consistent or consistently inconsistent, as in we've got a bit of a variability of sized work within each sprint, we don't need to be too careful about like sizing everything exactly the same, and this tool will still give us that benefit. Is that a fair assumption? So
as I've shown you from this data, where you've got different types of work that are significantly different in the effort involved, and as manifested in the time it ends up taking retrospectively, you're going to have a few problems, regardless of which agile approach that you're using. And I'm not going to go into hashtag no estimates and all that kind of stuff, but most agile approaches acknowledge that the best thing you can do in any agile delivery is to limit your work in progress and cut things down into smaller pieces of work, because you've got a lower chance of things getting taking a lot longer or finding unknown unknowns. Okay, so when I say right sizing, I was referring in particular to people artificially right sizing epics, which is a whole other thing I'd rather talk on another channel about. But it's in everyone's interest to make sure the things that you pull in are within a smallish size, whatever that is suitable for your team.
Yeah, so definitely would be looking for the guys to not be making stories, for example, that last more than a sprint. But I'm just thinking of if we've got some tasks that are taking a day and some tasks that are taking a week, or stories, that's broadly kind of okay, as long as we're not got things that are spanning like 3 or 4 sprints.
I mean, you are working. Go on.
Yeah, Tom, I do think that's okay. I think the team is a practical group. You know, they're smart people. They're not going to bring in, if they use story points, they're not going to bring in a bunch of 8s into their sprint, right? They're gonna use a practical approach and have several small things, and it's going to be pretty consistent if they're, you know, if they kind of got their heads on straight. So, big picture, it's it does factor that in, I think.
Cool. And I think my other, similar to Sharon's question, was there's nowhere in the tool at the moment, so say a couple of examples you guys gave, like team capacity is going to increase because team size is going to increase, which I know that's not it's not a nice linear relationship, we can't necessarily prove that out, but say within a reasonable team size we're going to get a couple of extra folks. There's nowhere for that right now. That is something you kind of have to kind of spitball on the outside of the tool.
Situational, I would say you use a higher confidence level maybe, but if you don't know the person who's coming in, you have no idea how they're going to operate together, then you may not want to raise your confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we know that when new people join a team, it could be 3 months before they're a positive value contributor. I would always, in that instance, think of this as a data set of many that you could use, and I'm loath to get into a suggestion with business stakeholders that we can predict how humans will work. We can affect it by creating sustainable, rigid processes, and we can make systems to become more aware of things that happen. Really, I mean, you could argue that, you know, if we were losing a data set and we knew that, say, it was going over 2 years, and we knew that every 2 months we changed the teams around, you might, and everything else was uniform, you might be able to use that model in some way, but I'd steer clear of that, because you're dealing with complex knowledge work and you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Cool. By the way, thanks so much for doing this, guys. Really appreciate it. I was the one that randomly dropped the question, and I'm kind of blown away that off the back of that, you guys have gone and prepared the whole thing.
It's exciting stuff. And I like to evangelize about this stuff. So yeah, thanks for asking the question, Tom.
It's one of my favorite subjects, because people are getting more confident in these tools. The last client I went in, I didn't have to have the conversation about, oh, you should really acquire this tool, it's great. But they were using it really poorly, and they were making huge assumptions about the efficacy of the tool without understanding the interplay between the different types of data and things. So it's just really important that we use these tools, but we use them responsibly. And it's our responsibility as Agile coaches and people linked in that field to use this properly. So I'll happily talk about this anytime.
Cool.
That was a fitting summary to put there at the end there, Ben.
Great.
That was awesome, guys. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, well, and buy my washing powder. I'll catch you all later. I'll stop the recording there.
You didn't record that at the start, so people are going to be very confused about what that means.
No, that's fine. Are you happy, Greg?
Yeah, I love it. Thanks so much.
Cool.
That was fun.
Thank you. Cool. Right. See you later.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
See you.